Ambassador Kelrith had seen many strange things in his 40 years of service to the Galactic Council. He had visited gas giants where floating creatures sang in harmony. He had walked on ice worlds where cities glowed beneath frozen oceans. He had even survived a diplomatic mission to a planet with 3 suns. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. His survey ship drifted near. The edge of a solar system the Council had marked as restricted. The star charts called it Sol. The planet they were interested in was called Earth by its inhabitants. The Council had been watching this world for decades, waiting to see if the primitive species there would destroy themselves before reaching the stars. Most Deathworld species did exactly that. Kelrith's job was simple: monitor the system from a safe distance, record any signs of space travel, report back to the Council. Do not make contact. The rules were very clear about that last part. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. The gravity was twice what most species considered comfortable. The atmosphere was thick with reactive oxygen. The weather systems were violently unpredictable. The native life forms were aggressive predators that ate each other to survive. And the dominant species, these humans, had spent most of their recorded history fighting wars against their own kind. No sane diplomat wanted to meet creatures like that Kel was reviewing his sensor data when his ship's computer made a sound he had never heard before. It was an alarm. A very urgent alarm. The ambassador looked at his display screen and felt his blood turn cold. 15 warships had appeared around his vessel. They had not been there a moment ago. They had simply materialized out of empty space like ghosts. Each ship was enormous, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons that his computer could not identify. The design was aggressive and functional. These were not exploration vessels. These were ships built for war. The largest ship moved closer. It was painted dark gray with white markings. The hull had scars that suggested it had seen combat. Many combats. A message appeared on Kelrith's communication screen. It was in his own language. Perfect grammar. Perfect pronunciation. Unidentified vessel. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Nations Special Forces. Third Fleet. You have entered protected space. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. We mean you no harm if you come in peace. Kelrith's hands shook as he activated his response system. His voice came out higher than he intended. This is Ambassador Kelrith of the Galactic Council. I am on a peaceful survey mission. I did not know this space was claimed. Please forgive the intrusion. There was a pause. Kelrith watched as smaller ships detached from the warships around him. They moved with frightening speed and precision. He realized they were positioning themselves to board his vessel if needed. His shields would not stop them. Nothing he had would stop them. Commander Chen's face appeared on his screen. She was a human female, with dark hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were calm and intelligent. She wore a military uniform that looked both practical and intimidating. Behind her, Kelrith could see other humans working at control stations. They moved with quiet efficiency. Ambassador Kelrith, we have confirmed your identity with our diplomatic database. You are welcome here. We apologize for the aggressive posture, but we have had some problems with raiders in this sector. Would you accept an invitation to meet face to face? I think we have much to discuss. Kelrith could hardly believe what he was hearing. These Deathworlders were being polite. They had him completely surrounded and helpless, but they were asking permission to talk. His training had not covered this scenario. I would be honored to meet with you, Commander, he managed to say. Within an hour, Kelrith found himself aboard the human flagship. They had called it the Valkyrie. A shuttle had brought him across the short distance. Human soldiers had escorted him through corridors that seemed designed for creatures much larger and stronger than himself. Everything was built heavy and solid. The meeting room was surprisingly comfortable. The humans had adjusted the gravity to match his home world. They had provided a chair suited to his body structure. There was even a beverage that his database confirmed was safe for his biology. The attention to detail was impressive. Commander Chen sat across from him with 2 other officers. One was an older human male with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. The other was a younger female with dark skin and bright, curious eyes. They all watched him with interest, but not hostility. "Ambassador, I am sure you have many questions," Chen began. "Let me start by explaining who we are. Humanity achieved faster than light travel 11 years ago. We have spent that time building a defense network around our home system and establishing colonies on nearby worlds. We encountered some hostile species early in our expansion. We learned quickly that the galaxy is not always a friendly place." The older officer, who introduced himself as Captain William Harris, pulled up a holographic display. It showed the human territory, which was larger than Kelrith had expected. "We have 47 colony worlds now. About 12 billion humans live off Earth. Our Special Forces fleet maintains security and responds to emergencies. We also conduct first contact missions, which is why we are here talking peacefully instead of shooting at each other. Forgive me, but the Council believed your species had barely left your home world. How did you build all of this so quickly?" The younger officer, Lieutenant Maya Okonkwo, smiled. It was not a threatening expression, but it made Kelrith uncomfortable anyway. Humans had very prominent teeth. "Ambassador, humans are very good at building things quickly when we are motivated. And after we met our first hostile aliens, we became very motivated. Earth taught us to adapt or die. We adapted." Chen nodded. "We would very much like to establish formal relations with your Galactic Council. We have been monitoring your broadcasts for years. We know you represent hundreds of species living in peace. That is something we admire and want to be part of. But we also know you have marked Earth as a restricted world. We understand why. We probably seem frightening to you." Kelrith did not know what to say to that. These humans were being so reasonable, so diplomatic. But he could not forget the 15 warships waiting outside. He could not ignore the fact that every human he had seen moved like a predator, coiled and ready. Their world had made them into something the galaxy had never encountered before. Survivors, warriors, and now, possibly friends. "I will take your request to the Council," Kelrith said carefully. "But I must be honest. Many species will fear humanity. Your capabilities are beyond what we expected." Chen stood and offered her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Ambassador, we understand fear. We lived with it every day on Earth. Storms, earthquakes, predators, disease, and each other. We learned that the answer to fear is not isolation. It is cooperation. We hope to show your council that we can be trusted partners." As Kelrith's shuttle carried him back to his ship, he looked at the human fleet surrounding him. He thought about Commander Chun's words. He wondered if the galaxy was ready for humanity. More importantly, he wondered if humanity was ready for the galaxy. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Kelrith's first encounter with the human fleet. In that time, he had sent 17 detailed reports to the Galactic Council. He had included sensor readings, tactical assessments, cultural observations, and his own professional opinions. The Council's response had been predictable. Debate, argument, fear, and finally, a decision to send Kelrith back to learn more. Most of his colleagues thought he was insane for volunteering. Deathworlders were dangerous. Everyone knew that. The few species that had evolved on high-gravity worlds with hostile environments were always aggressive. They had to be, or they would not survive. The galaxy's history was full of cautionary tales about what happened when Deathworld species reached space. But Kelrith had seen something in Commander Chen's eyes. Something that did not match the stories. He needed to understand what it was. Now he stood in the docking bay of the UNSF Endeavour, the flagship of humanity's third fleet. The ship was even larger than the Valkyrie. According to the information packet the humans had sent him, the Endeavour was nearly 2 kilometers long and carried a crew of 4,000. It also hosted 3 battalions of special forces, soldiers, and enough firepower to destroy a small moon captain. James Rodriguez greeted him personally. The human was tall, even by their standards, with dark eyes and an easy smile. He wore a uniform that was slightly different from the combat gear Kelrith had seen before. This one had more decorations and insignia. "Ambassador Kelrith, welcome aboard. I hope your journey was comfortable. We are honored to host you for the next 2 weeks as we travel to New Brasilia for the diplomatic summit." Kelrith performed the formal greeting gesture his species used. Captain Rodriguez, thank you for your hospitality. I am eager to learn more about humanity. We are eager to share, Rodriguez said. I have taken the liberty of assigning Lieutenant Maya Okonkwo as your guide and liaison. You met her during your first visit? She has prepared a full schedule of tours, briefings, and observations. You will have complete access to our training facilities, living quarters, and recreational areas. The only restriction is our weapons research labs, and that is purely for safety reasons. Some of our experiments are dangerous, even for humans. That last comment made Kelrith's skin crawl slightly. What kind of weapons research was dangerous for creatures that evolved on a death world? Lieutenant Okonkwo appeared a moment later. She was just as Kelrith remembered, young and energetic, with an expression of constant curiosity. She greeted him warmly and immediately began the tour. The first stop was the observation deck. Through the massive windows, Kelrith could see stars streaking past as the ship traveled faster than light. It was beautiful in a way that transcended species. Okonkwo stood beside him quietly, letting him enjoy the view. Lieutenant, may I ask you a personal question? Kelrith said after a while. Of course, Ambassador. Why did you join the military? From what I understand, humanity has achieved peace on Earth. There are no more wars between your nations. You could have chosen any career. Why this? Okonkwo thought for a moment before answering. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days. Wars, famines, disasters. She lived through some terrible times. But she always said that the people who saved her, who helped her survive, were the ones who had chosen to protect others. I wanted to be that person. The universe is bigger than Earth now, but it is not less dangerous. Someone needs to stand between innocent people and the threats out there. She pointed out the window. When we first left Earth, we were excited. We thought space would be this wonderful place full of friendly aliens and adventure. Then we met the Krathi pirates. They attacked one of our colony ships, killed 300 people before we could respond. We learned fast that the galaxy has predators too, just different kinds. The next several days were educational in ways Kelrith had not expected. Okonkwo showed him everything. He watched human soldiers train in combat simulators that recreated dozens of different alien environments. He observed medical teams practicing emergency procedures for species they had never met. He sat in on tactical briefings where officers discussed how to rescue hostages without starting wars. But what truly disturbed him was the physical training. The gym was enormous, filled with equipment that looked like torture devices. Humans ran on machines that simulated different gravity levels. They lifted weights that would crush most species. They practiced hand-to-hand combat with an intensity that made Kelrith flinch. One training session particularly shocked him. A squad of soldiers entered a chamber that Okonkwo explained was a high-gravity simulator. The gravity inside was increased to 3 times Earth's normal. Earth's gravity was already twice what Kelrith's species could handle comfortably. 3 times Earth's gravity would kill him in minutes. The humans trained in it for an hour. How is this possible? Kelrith asked, his voice barely a whisper. Okonkwo smiled that unsettling human smile. This is actually pretty mild, Ambassador. The really intense training happens on high-gravity worlds. We have a facility on a planet we call Crucible. The gravity there is 2.4 times Earth's standard. Special Forces candidates spend 3 months there as part of their qualification course. Only about 30% pass. Kelrith did the mathematics in his head. 2.4 times Earth gravity. That was nearly 5 times his home world's gravity. These humans trained in conditions that would be lethal to most species in the galaxy. Your people, he said slowly, you are not just stronger than us. You are built completely differently. Earth made us this way, Okonkwo replied. Strong gravity meant we needed dense bones and powerful muscles. Aggressive predators meant we needed good reflexes and problem-solving skills. Extreme weather meant we learned to adapt quickly. We did not choose to be Deathworlders, Ambassador. We just had to survive on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. That night, Kelrith could not sleep. He spent hours in his quarters reviewing his notes and recordings. He thought about the implications of what he had seen. Humanity had only been in space for 11 years. Just 11 years. And they had already built a military force that could probably defeat any single species in the Council. But that was not what frightened him. What frightened him was how carefully they controlled that power. Every human he had met was polite, professional, and genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. Their weapons were devastating, but they used them with precision and restraint. Their soldiers were warriors. Yes, they were also medics and engineers and diplomats. The next day, Okonkwo took him to meet some of the enlisted soldiers. They gathered in a common room during their off-duty hours. There were about 20 of them, from different parts of Earth and different backgrounds. They welcomed Kelrith warmly, offered him human food and drink, and answered his questions with patience and humor. One young soldier named Chen, no relation to the commander, showed Kelrith pictures of his family back on Earth. Another soldier named Amara talked about her dream of becoming a xenobiologist after her military service ended. A third soldier named Ivan taught Kelrith a card game that was apparently popular in human culture. These were not monsters. These were people who laughed and joked and cared about each other. They just happened to be the most dangerous people Kelrith had ever met. As the Endeavor approached New Brasilia, Kelrith found himself in conversation with Captain Rodriguez again. The captain had invited him to dinner in his private quarters. The meal was excellent, carefully prepared to match Kelrith's dietary needs. "Captain, I must confess something," Kelrith said. "When I first encountered your species, I was terrified. I believed humanity would be a threat to galactic peace. But now, I am confused. You are everything the stories say Deathworlders should be. Strong, aggressive, dangerous, but you are also kind and thoughtful and restrained. How do these things exist together?" Rodriguez set down his fork and looked at Kelrith with serious eyes. "Ambassador, Earth taught us 2 lessons. The first was how to fight and survive. But the second lesson was more important. It taught us that we survive better together than apart. Humans are tribal by nature. We form groups, families, communities. We protect each other. That instinct is as strong as our ability to fight. Maybe stronger." He gestured around the ship. "Everyone on this vessel chose to be here. They volunteer to risk their lives protecting others. That is the real strength of humanity, Ambassador. Not our muscles or our weapons. It is our choice to use our strength for protection instead of conquest." Kelrith hoped the captain was right, because if humans ever changed their minds about peace, the galaxy would burn. The diplomatic summit on New Brasilia had been going well. Kelrith had spent 3 days introducing human representatives to various council species. There had been awkward moments, of course. Some species found human handshakes too aggressive. Others were disturbed by how much humans smiled, showing their teeth. But overall, the interactions had been positive. Cautiously positive, then everything changed. The emergency transmission came during the opening ceremony of the 4th day. Kelrith was sitting between Admiral Lisa Torres, commander of the Human Third Fleet, and Ambassador Varel of the Centauri Union. They were watching a cultural performance by a group of human musicians when every military officer in the room suddenly touched their communication devices. The music stopped. The room fell silent. Admiral Torres stood up, her face transformed from diplomatic pleasantness to cold focus in an instant. Kelrith watched this change with fascination and fear. This was what a human warrior looked like when the mask came off. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received a priority alert from the Galactic Council Emergency Network," Torres announced. Her voice carried across the hall without shouting. "The Kresh Dominion has launched coordinated attacks on 3 council worlds: Meridian 4, Celos Prime, and New Harmony. Initial reports indicate they have taken thousands of civilians hostage and are demanding territorial concessions." The council delegates erupted into panic. Voices rose in a dozen languages. Some species began their evacuation protocols immediately. Kelrith felt his own hearts racing. The Kresh were nightmare creatures from the galactic east. They had been raiding council space for 3 generations. Their technology was superior to anything the Council possessed. Their tactics were brutal. They did not negotiate in good faith. Hundreds had died in previous Kresh raids. The Council had tried military responses, but the Kresh simply retreated to their heavily fortified territory and waited for things to calm down. Then they raided again. It was a cycle that had repeated for decades. Ambassador Vrel, who served as the Council's senior military coordinator, stood on shaking legs. His voice trembled as he spoke. "We must convene the Defense Committee immediately. Our fastest ships can reach Meridian 4 and 6 days if we depart within the hour. Celos Prime is 7 days away. New Harmony is 8. We need to coordinate with the local defense forces in 6 days." Torres interrupted. Every human in the room was now standing. They had formed a loose formation without seeming to consciously plan it. Their body language had changed completely. These were not diplomats anymore. These were soldiers. "Ambassador Vrel, what about the hostages? What is your standard response protocol?" Vrel looked uncomfortable. "We will negotiate." The Kresh usually accepts payment and territorial rights in exchange for releasing prisoners. It is not ideal, but it minimizes casualties. Direct military action against the Kresh has never succeeded. Torres exchanged glances with the other human officers. Something passed between them, some silent communication. Then the Admiral turned back to the Council delegates. "With respect, Ambassador, that approach will not work this time. The Kresh have attacked 3 worlds simultaneously. They are testing your resolve. If you pay them now, they will know they can take whatever they want. What would you suggest?" Vrel asked, a hint of irritation in his voice. "Your species has been in space for barely a decade. The Council has been dealing with the Kresh for generations. I suggest we stop dealing and start solving," Torres said simply. "Admiral, how long to reach all 3 systems with current fleet positions?" A human officer checked his data pad. "Ma'am, the Endeavor can make Meridian 4 in 16 hours. The Valkyrie is closer to Celos Prime, 14 hours. The Adamant can reach New Harmony in 18 hours. Torres nodded. "Prep all 3 battle groups for immediate deployment. Full Special Forces loadout. I want assault teams, rescue specialists, and medical units on standby. Authorization code Torres 77 Delta. Execute." The humans moved as one. Within seconds, the military personnel had left the hall. Kelrith found himself running after Admiral Torres, his diplomatic instincts screaming that he needed to observe what happened next.
"Admiral."
"Wait," he called out. Torres stopped and turned to face him. "You cannot just launch a military operation in Council space without authorization. There are protocols, procedures." "Ambassador Kelrith," Torres said, her voice gentle but firm. "Those protocols will take days to navigate. People are dying right now. I am not asking the Council for permission. I am informing them of what humanity is about to do. If they want to lodge a formal complaint, they can do so after we have brought everyone home safely." Kelrith made a decision that would define his career. "I am coming with you." Torres smiled. It was a warrior's smile. "I was hoping you would say that. You will observe from the command deck of the Endeavor. But Ambassador, I need you to understand something. What you are about to see may frighten you. When humans go to war, we do not do it halfway. We are very, very good at violence. We have been practicing it for thousands of years." 6 hours later, Kelrith stood on the command deck of the Endeavor. As it dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Meridian 4 system, the main display showed the planet below, beautiful and blue like Earth. It also showed 6 Kresh warships in orbit, and dozens of smaller vessels moving between the surface and the fleet. The Kresh. Ships were massive and angular, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like metal predators. Kelrith's database said each one could destroy a Council defense fleet single-handed. The Endeavor was alone. "All hands, this is Admiral Torres. We have entered hostile territory. Our mission is simple. Rescue every hostage. Disable the Kresh fleet. Do not kill unless absolutely necessary, but do not hesitate if lives are at stake. Remember your training. Trust your teams. Make Earth proud. The response from the crew was a single word shouted in unison. Ura. Then hell broke loose. The Endeavour launched fighters and assault shuttles in a coordinated swarm. Kelrith watched his sensor display light up with hundreds of small craft. At the same time, the ship fired weapons he had not known existed. Beams of concentrated energy that carved through Kresh shields like they were paper, missiles that moved too fast for point defense systems to track, electronic warfare packages that blinded enemy sensors. But it was the special forces teams that truly amazed him. Small assault shuttles screamed into the atmosphere at speeds that should have torn them apart. They landed near the Kresh ground forces with precision that seemed impossible. Then human soldiers poured out and engaged the enemy in close combat. Kelrith watched through drone feeds as teams of humans moved through the occupied zones. They used weapons, yes, but also tactics that the Kresh had never encountered. Deception, misdirection, psychological warfare. One team broadcast a message that made the Kresh think their command ship was about to fire on their position. The panicked Kresh soldiers abandoned their posts, allowing the humans to secure hostages without firing a shot. Another team used the high gravity of Meridian 4 to their advantage. The planet's gravity was similar to Earth's. It's comfortable for humans, but exhausting for the Kresh, who evolved on a lighter world. Human soldiers sprinted and jumped and climbed with ease while the Kresh struggled to keep up. Within 2 hours, Endeavour had disabled 4 of the 6 Kresh warships and rescued 80% of the hostages. The remaining Kresh commander sent a surrender signal. Torres accepted the surrender, but did not stop the operation. Secure all vessels. Medical teams to the surface. I want every hostage checked and treated. Gather any Kresh wounded as well. They get the same medical care as everyone else. That is an order. Kelrith could not believe what he was witnessing. The humans had done in 2 hours what the Council could not do in 30 years. They had defeated the Kresh, decisively, completely, and they had done it with minimal casualties on both sides. Lieutenant Okonkwo appeared at Kelrith's side. She was wearing combat armor now, scratched and scorched from battle, but she was smiling. Ambassador, you should see this. We are bringing the hostages up now. The next hour was chaos of the best kind. Rescued civilians poured onto the Endeavour, confused and traumatized but alive. Human medics worked alongside the ship's medical staff to treat injuries and calm fears. Children, who had been crying, were given food and blankets. Adults were reunited with family members, and through it all, human soldiers moved with gentle efficiency. These same warriors who had just dismantled a Kresh fleet were now carrying exhausted children and comforting frightened refugees. Kelrith received similar reports from Celos Prime and Nu. Harmony over the next several hours. The Valkyrie and Adamant had executed identical operations with identical results. Total success. Minimal casualties. The Kresh Dominion's 3-pronged attack had been countered in less than a day. As Kelrith watched a human soldier named Chen carefully bandaging a young alien child's injured arm, he finally understood what Captain Rodriguez had meant. These humans were dangerous, yes, perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they had chosen to use that danger in service of protection. They were predators who had decided to hunt other predators instead of prey. The galaxy had never seen anything like them, and Kelrith suspected the galaxy would never be the same again. The week after the Kresh incident was strange for Ambassador Kelrith. He had expected triumph, celebration, maybe even some arrogance from the humans. They had just accomplished something the entire Galactic Council had failed to do for 3 decades. They had every right to be proud. Instead, he seemed almost uncomfortable with the attention. Kelrith requested a private meeting with Admiral Torres. In her office aboard the Endeavour. The space was surprisingly modest for someone of her rank. A desk, a few chairs, some pictures of Earth on the walls. There were no trophies, no displays of military might. Just a workspace where someone did their job. Torres welcomed him with coffee. A human beverage that Kelrith had actually grown to enjoy, despite its strange, bitter taste. They sat in comfortable chairs near a window that showed the stars. Admiral, I need to understand something, Kelrith began. Your military capability is beyond anything the Council possesses. You defeated the Kresh in hours. You could probably conquer half the galaxy if you wanted to. But you act like none of that matters. Why? Torres took a sip of her coffee and thought for a long moment. Ambassador, let me tell you a story about Earth, about 1,000 years ago. There was a human empire called Rome. They were incredibly powerful. They conquered most of the known world at that time. They had superior military tactics, better organization, stronger discipline. Sound familiar? Kelrith nodded. Rome fell, Torres continued. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because they became corrupt from within. Power without purpose always destroys itself eventually. Every human child learns this history. We have hundreds of examples from our own past. Empires rise and empires fall. The ones that last longest are not the strongest. They are the wisest. She gestured out the window at the stars. We are powerful, yes, but we are also young, very young. We have been in space for 11 years, Ambassador. That is nothing. Most species in the Council have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. They have learned lessons we have not even encountered yet. They have made mistakes we have not had time to make. We need their wisdom more than they need our strength. But you saved those people, Kelrith said. The hostages. The Council could not do it. This time, Torres agreed. But what about next time? What if we make a mistake? What if our aggressive tactics cause a larger war? What if we do not understand the cultural complications of a situation and make things worse? Power is only useful if you know how to apply it correctly. And we are still learning. She pulled up a holographic display showing a map of known space. Human territory was marked in blue, Council space in green, and dozens of other colors showed the territories of species the Council had not made contact with yet. Look at this, Ambassador. The galaxy is huge. We have explored maybe 1% of it. There are species out there we know nothing about. Some of them might be friendly. Some might be hostile. Some might make the Kresh look like children playing war games. Torres expanded the map, and Kelrith saw what she meant. Beyond the known regions were vast areas of unexplored space. Thousands of star systems, millions of worlds. The possibilities were endless and terrifying. We need allies, Torres said simply. We need friends who can teach us about galactic politics, trade networks, diplomatic protocols. We need partners who can warn us about dangers we do not know exist. That is worth more than any military victory. Over the next few days, Kelrith observed this philosophy in action. Human officers attended briefings with Council military advisors, taking notes and asking questions. Human diplomats studied Council history and cultural practices with genuine interest. Human scientists shared their technology freely and asked for nothing in return except knowledge. Lieutenant Okonkwo took Kelrith to visit one of these scientific exchanges. A team of human researchers was working with a group of Vrel scientists on a new medical technology. The Vrel were experts in biological engineering. The humans had advanced knowledge of trauma medicine learned from their dangerous world. Together, they were developing treatments that neither species could have created alone. This is what we want, Okonkwo explained. Not conquest. Not dominance. Just cooperation. Everyone benefits when we work together. Kelrith also saw the darker side of human nature during his extended stay. He witnessed an argument between two human officers that almost turned violent. Their tempers flared quickly, dangerously. Other humans had to physically separate them. Later, Okonkwo explained that humans had strong emotions that could sometimes overwhelm their judgment. We are not perfect, Ambassador, she admitted. Earth made us aggressive and competitive. Those traits helped us survive, but they also cause problems. We fight among ourselves sometimes. We make impulsive decisions. We hold grudges. That is why we need rules and discipline and consequences. Left to our worst instincts, humans can be terrible. Kelrith appreciated the honesty. It made him trust them more, strangely enough. A species that understood its own flaws was less dangerous than one that thought it was perfect. He also learned about human concepts of justice and mercy. The Kresh prisoners from the recent battle were being held aboard the Endeavor temporarily. Kelrith expected them to be treated poorly. Enemy combatants rarely received good treatment in council space, but the humans treated them with the same care as their own wounded. The Kresh received medical attention, proper food, and comfortable quarters. Some of them were confused by this treatment. Others were suspicious. A few were grateful. Captain Rodriguez explained the human philosophy during one of their evening conversations. Ambassador, we have a saying on Earth. Today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend. The Kresh attacked us. Yes. But they are also people with families and homes and lives. If we treat them with cruelty, we create hatred that lasts generations. If we treat them with dignity, we might create understanding. That is very idealistic, Kelrith observed. Maybe Rodriguez agreed. But it has worked for us. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting wars against each other. Nation against nation, culture against culture, ideology against ideology. We killed millions of our own kind. Then we finally learned that revenge and hatred only create more revenge and hatred. The cycle does not end until someone chooses to break it. Kelrith had trouble sleeping that night. He kept thinking about what he had learned. The humans were powerful and dangerous, but they were also thoughtful and self-aware. They could be violent, but they chose restraint. They could dominate, but they preferred partnership. The question that haunted him was simple. How long could they maintain this balance? How long before power corrupted them like it had corrupted so many species before them? History suggested that no species could resist the temptation forever. But then he remembered something Admiral Torres had said. The ones that last longest are not the strongest. They are the wisest. Perhaps humanity's real strength was not their muscles or their weapons. Perhaps it was their ability to learn from their mistakes, their willingness to admit they did not have all the answers, their choice to seek guidance from others instead of assuming they knew best. The next morning, Kelrith composed a long message to the Galactic Council. He reported everything he had observed over the past months. The military capabilities, the cultural practices, the philosophy and values that guided human decisions. His conclusion was carefully worded. The human species represents both an opportunity and a risk for the Council. They possess military power that exceeds our own. They are aggressive by nature and quick to anger. They are young and inexperienced in galactic affairs. All of these factors suggest caution. He paused, considering his next words carefully. However, they also demonstrate wisdom beyond their years. They seek cooperation over conquest. They learn from their mistakes. They treat enemies with dignity and allies with respect. They understand that power without purpose is dangerous. I believe humanity can be trusted as partners, but only if we guide them carefully and honestly. We must not treat them as threats to be contained, but as students to be taught. In return, they may teach us lessons we have forgotten. Kelrith sent the message and waited for the Council's response. He knew there would be debate, fear, suspicion. Some species would want to reject humanity entirely. Others would want to exploit their military strength, but he hoped, with a feeling that surprised him, that wisdom would prevail. The galaxy needed humanity, not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners. As fellow travelers on the long journey through the stars, Lieutenant Okonkwo found him on the observation deck later that day. She stood beside him in comfortable silence, watching the stars stream past as the Endeavor traveled through space. "Thank you, Ambassador," she said finally. "For what? For giving us a chance? A lot of species would have rejected us outright, called us monsters, and closed their borders. You could have done that too. Instead, you chose to learn about us. To see us as we really are, good and bad together, that means more than you know." Kelrith felt something warm in his chest. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was friendship. Whatever it was, it felt right. "Lieutenant," he said, "I think this is the beginning of something important. Something that might change the galaxy." She smiled that unsettling human smile that he was finally getting used to. "I hope you are right, Ambassador. I really hope you are right. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Kelrith first encountered the human fleet near the Sol system. 6 months that had changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. Now, he stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, preparing to present his final report. The chamber was enormous. Built to accommodate representatives from 247 different species, it was carved from a single massive asteroid. With holographic displays floating in the air and translation devices humming softly in the background, every seat was filled. Everyone wanted to hear what Kelrith would say about the humans. The debate had been going on for 3 days already. Some council members were terrified of humanity and wanted to restrict their expansion. Others were grateful for the rescue of the Kresh hostages and wanted to welcome them as allies. A few opportunistic species saw humans as potential weapons to aim at their own enemies. Kelrith had listened to all of it. Now, it was his turn to speak. "Honored members of the council," he began, his voice amplified through the chamber's systems. "I have spent 6 months living among humanity. I have traveled on their ships, trained with their soldiers, spoken with their leaders, and broken bread with their families. I have seen them at their best and their worst. I believe I understand them as well as any non-human possibly can." He activated his presentation, showing images and videos from his time aboard the Endeavor. Humans training in impossible conditions. Humans rescuing hostages. Humans sharing meals and laughter with alien species. Humanity is everything we feared they would be. They are strong. They are aggressive. They are dangerous. Their homeworld forged them into warriors, and that cannot be changed. They will always be predators at their core. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Some species shifted nervously in their seats. But Kelrith continued, his voice growing stronger. "They are also something we did not expect. They are wise. They are compassionate. They are humble. They know their own flaws and work to overcome them. They possess military might that could conquer the known galaxy, yet they choose partnership over domination. This is not weakness. This is the rarest form of strength." He showed the footage of human soldiers treating Kresh prisoners with dignity, of Admiral Torres asking for advice from council military experts despite having superior forces, of Captain Rodriguez admitting that humanity needed guidance from older, wiser species. "We have 2 paths before us today," Kelrith said. "The first path is fear. We can treat humanity as a threat. We can restrict their expansion, limit their access to council space, and keep them isolated. This path feels safe. It is what we have done with every Deathworld species we have encountered." He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching him. "But this path leads to conflict. If we treat humans as enemies, they will eventually become enemies. If we deny them partnership, they will seek power alone. If we teach them that the galaxy responds only to force, they will become the very monsters we fear." Ambassador Vrel stood up, his voice sharp. "And the alternative, Ambassador Kelrith? You would have us welcome these Deathworlders with open arms. Ignore the danger they represent." "No," Kelrith replied firmly. "The second path is not to ignore the danger. It is to transform it. We invite humanity to join the Council as full members. We give them access to our knowledge, our trade networks, our diplomatic channels. But we also teach them. We share the lessons we have learned over thousands of years of galactic civilization. We show them that there are better ways to resolve conflicts than violence." He pulled up a star map showing the unexplored regions of space. "The galaxy is vast. There are threats out there we cannot imagine, species we have not met, dangers we have not faced. The Council has maintained peace through diplomacy and cooperation. These are powerful tools. But sometimes peace requires the ability to defend it. Humanity can provide that defense." Another council member spoke up, a representative from a species that had suffered under the Kresh raids for decades. "Ambassador Kelrith, my people owe humanity a debt. They saved thousands of lives when we could not. But debts do not erase dangers. How can we trust that humans will not turn their weapons against us?" It was the question Kelrith had been expecting, the question everything depended on. He thought about Commander Chen and Captain Rodriguez. about Admiral Torres and Lieutenant Okonkwo, about the young soldier named Chen, who showed him pictures of his family, about all the humans he had met who chose protection over conquest. "You ask how we can trust them," Kelrith said quietly. "I ask how they can trust us. They are young and vulnerable despite their strength. They know the Council could unite against them if we chose to. They know older species have knowledge and technology they lack, yet they come to us openly, honestly, asking for friendship. That requires courage. That requires trust." He deactivated the star map and looked directly at the Council representatives. "Humanity chose to save our people when they had no obligation to do so. They could have ignored the Kresh attacks. They could have used the crisis to demand concessions. Instead, they risked their own lives to rescue strangers. That is not the behavior of conquerors. That is the behavior of protectors." The debate continued for hours after Kelrith's presentation. Arguments flew back and forth. Some species threatened to leave the Council if humans were admitted. Others promised to establish independent alliances with humanity regardless of what the Council decided. Finally, in the early hours of the fourth day, a vote was called. The chamber fell silent as each species cast their decision. The holographic display showed the results building slowly. Yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, when the final count appeared. Kelrith felt his heart skip a beat. The vote was close, but clear. By a margin of 62%, the Galactic Council voted to invite humanity to join as full members. The chamber erupted in reactions. Some species celebrated. Others protested loudly. A few simply left in disgust. But the decision was made. 2 weeks later, Kelrith stood aboard the UNSF Endeavour once more. But this time, the ship was accompanied by vessels from dozens of Council species. They were approaching a neutral station where the official ceremony would take place. Commander Chen found him on the observation deck. She wore her dress uniform now, crisp and formal, but her eyes held the same warmth he remembered from their first meeting.
"Ambassador,
"Thank you for everything you have done. I know you took a great risk supporting us." Kelrith made a gesture of dismissal. "Commander, I did what I believed was right. But I must be honest. I am still afraid of us, of what might happen. Power corrupts, Commander Chen. History proves this across 1,000 worlds. Today, humanity chooses peace. But what about tomorrow? What about a century from now when you are the strongest species in the galaxy? Will you still choose cooperation over dominance?" Chen looked out at the stars for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I cannot promise what humans will choose a century from now. We are not perfect. We have done terrible things in our history. We might do terrible things again. All I can promise is that we will try. Every day, we will try to be better than we were yesterday."
Oh.
That is what Earth taught us, Ambassador. Not just how to survive, but how to grow. How to learn. How to change. We are Deathworlders, yes. But we are also students. We want to learn from you, from the Council, from every species we meet. We want to become worthy of the trust you have placed in us. The ceremony was beautiful. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the station's main hall. Human diplomats stood alongside Council ambassadors as formal documents were signed and translated into hundreds of languages. Admiral Torres gave a speech about humanity's commitment to galactic peace. Council Chairman Murtaugh welcomed humanity to the community of civilized species, but the moment that stayed with Kelrith was smaller, quieter. After the ceremony, he saw Lieutenant Okonkwo talking with a group of alien children who had come with their parents to witness the historic event. The children were from a species that had been rescued during the Kresh incident. They recognized Okonkwo from the battle and surrounded her with questions. She knelt down to their level, smiling that human smile that Kelrith no longer found frightening. She answered their questions patiently. She let them touch her military medals. She told them stories about Earth and showed them pictures of human children their age. This was humanity, Kelrith realized. Warriors who could be gentle, predators who chose to protect. Deathworlders who understood that survival was not just about strength, but about connection. Later that evening, Kelrith stood with Captain Rodriguez on the station's observation deck. They watched as ships from dozens of species moved through space together, no longer strangers, but partners. "Captain, do you think this will work? Can humans really coexist peacefully with the rest of the galaxy?" Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, Ambassador, I do not know. We have never done anything like this before. Earth prepared us to survive against hostile nature and hostile neighbors. But it did not prepare us for this kind of cooperation on this scale." He smiled slightly, "But that is okay. We will figure it out. That is what humans do. We adapt. We learn. We make mistakes and fix them. It is not elegant or perfect, but it works." Kelrith felt that warm feeling in his chest again. Hope. He had spent 6 months afraid of what humanity might become. Now, he was afraid of what might happen if they failed, but he was also hopeful. The galaxy had never seen anything like humanity before. A species that was both predator and protector. A species that understood violence but chose peace. A species that admitted their flaws instead of hiding them. Maybe they would fail. Maybe power would corrupt them eventually. Maybe a century from now, the Council would regret this decision. Or maybe, just maybe, humanity would teach the galaxy something new. That strength without wisdom was useless. That power without purpose was dangerous. That the strongest choice was not always the violent one. As Kelrith watched Commander Chen's ship, the Valkyrie, join formation with a Council patrol fleet for their first joint mission, he allowed himself to believe in possibilities. The Deathworlders had arrived. They had been feared, tested, and finally accepted. Now the real challenge began. Not conquering the galaxy, but learning to live in it. Not proving their strength, but proving their wisdom. And Kelrith would be there to watch. To guide and to hope that humanity would become everything they promised to be. Not conquerors from a brutal world, but guardians who remembered where they came from and chose to be better. The future was uncertain. It always was. But for the first time in his long career, Ambassador Kelrith believed that uncertainty might lead somewhere good, somewhere worth believing in.